Listen up. This world doesn't care about your excuses, your struggles, or your feelings. It cares about one thing: results. And the brutal truth: money gets results. Broke people stay trapped not because they're not smart, but because they're playing the wrong game. You think stress isn't tied to money. Look at the arguments in every household. Bills, debts, missed opportunities, all from not having cash. You think freedom is free. Try saying no to a boss when you got $20 in your bank account. Money buys time, choices, power, and most importantly, peace. You can meditate all you want, but if your rent's overdue, good luck finding Zen. You want to fix your health, your mindset, your family. It takes money, not love, not dreams, money. So stop wasting time whining about the system and start learning how to conquer it. Life's a war zone, and cash is your weapon. Win with it or get used to losing. Money buys freedom, not just things. That's the truth most people never understand because they're too busy chasing survival instead of dominance. When you hear the word money, your mind probably jumps to cars, watches, vacations, and clothes. That's consumer talk. That's how the system keeps you weak, feeding you dopamine through shiny objects while you stay mentally and financially enslaved. But real players know better. Real players use money as a tool, a weapon, a key, not to show off, but to unlock freedom. Freedom is being able to wake up when you want. It's being able to move how you want, speak how you want, live where you want, without ever asking for permission. Freedom is looking at a clock and realizing it doesn't control you. Most people can't relate to that. They wake up when they're told. They clock in because they're forced. They tolerate disrespect because they fear losing their paycheck. That's not life. That's a prison with a salary. You see, the guy with money doesn't wait in lines. He doesn't ask, "Can I take time off?" He decides. He travels first class not for luxury, but because he values his time and refuses to be treated like a statistic. He walks into places with confidence because he's not worried about how he's going to pay the bills next week. Money removes fear. And without fear, you get to live like a lion among sheep. When you're broke, you're controlled by your job, your landlord, your schedule, your budget. Every decision you make is filtered through the lens of limitation. Should I eat here? No, too expensive. Should I pursue this idea? No, too risky. Should I leave this toxic environment? No, I can't afford to. Every move you make is permission-based, restricted by invisible chains of lack. Money cuts those chains. Money makes your yes stronger and your no more powerful. People talk about following their passions, chasing dreams. But dreams don't mean anything if you can't fund them. That's why broke geniuses stay in the shadows while average men with wealth run the world. Because the system isn't about talent, it's about resources. And money is the ultimate resource. It fuels your mission, it funds your moves, and it creates your advantage. You want to change your life, change your family's future. It starts with capital. That's the hard truth. And here's the part. No one wants to say people respect freedom. When you live on your own terms, people look at you differently. Not because you're flashy, but because you radiate power. You don't flinch. You don't beg. You don't shrink in the face of authority because you don't depend on anyone's approval. That kind of freedom is only possible when you've stacked enough money to say, "I don't need this." That's the moment everything shifts. You stop surviving and start commanding. Look around you. The people who seem the happiest aren't always smiling because life is perfect. They're smiling because life is theirs. They chose their path. They're not stuck in traffic cursing the clock, rushing to sit in a cubicle they hate. They're not counting down to the weekend because every day belongs to them. That's the life money buys, not the gold chain house, the big house. It's about control over your time, your environment, your energy. And don't confuse freedom with laziness. This isn't about sitting around doing nothing. It's about waking up with fire, building something you believe in, and having the power to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you. You can't do that when you're broke. You can't stand for your values when you're desperate. That's why so many people sell their souls, because they don't have the financial backing to walk away. You want to help your family. You need freedom. You want to speak the truth. You need freedom. You want to live life on your terms, not theirs. You need freedom. And freedom comes from one thing: stacking enough money to stop a broke people have no leverage. That's the brutal truth no one wants to say out loud because it hurts. But the truth doesn't care about your feelings. If you're broke, no one listens to you. You don't get a seat at the table. You don't get to negotiate. You don't get to demand. You're just another voice in the crowd hopping. Someone throws you a bone. That's the position you're in when you don't have money. Weak, dependent, disposable. When you have no leverage, you have to say ice to things you hate. You work jobs you can't stand, take orders from people you don't respect, and stay quiet in situations that scream for a reaction. Because speaking up might cost you everything. That's not strength. That's survival mode. You obey, not because you agree, but because you're financially handcuffed. That's what being broke really means. Not just empty pockets, but a life full of compromises. Leverage is power. It's the ability to walk away. It's the ability to say, I don't need this, and actually mean it. People respect you when they know you have options. Employers respect you when they know you can quit. Clients respect you when they know you can replace them. People, institutions, the world, they all bend differently when you're not desperate. Every day. And that only happens when you've got the money to back your independence. Broke people dream about freedom. Wealthy people enforce it. If you've got no money, you can't make moves. You're stuck hoping things get better, waiting for someone to rescue you or give you an opportunity. That's not leverage. That's gambling with your life. You don't win like that. You win by stacking so much power, financial, physical, that no one can touch you. You win by becoming untouchable through preparation, not hope. When you walk into a room and they know you don't need them, everything shifts. You speak different. You move different. You don't chase, you attract. That's leverage. And leverage is earned through years of grinding while everyone else is scrolling. It's built through discipline, sacrifice, and learning how money works while everyone else complains about the system but never studies the game. The system doesn't reward complaints. It rewards control. And control comes from leverage. People think they're free, but they're not. They're tied to a paycheck, tied to a loan, tied to approval, tied to fear. Try walking away from your job tomorrow. Most can't because the bills will come knocking before the week's over. Try saying no to a toxic relationship when you rely on that person financially. You'll find out how little control you really have. When you're broke, you live life on everyone else's terms. Even your opinions are muted when you have no leverage. You see something wrong, but you stay quiet because your position is fragile. You know you're being disrespected, but you bite your tongue because your rent is due. You want to make a change, start a business, chase a vision, but your bank account tells you to sit down and shut up. That's what being broke costs you: your voice, your choices, your pride. The difference between a man with leverage and a man without it is night and day. One walks into a negotiation ready to walk away. The other walks in praying to be accepted. One can fire a client. The other has to tolerate abuse for the invoice. One lives life aggressively. The other plays defense from sunrise to sunset. That's the gap money creates. Not just in lifestyle, in posture, in spirit, in reality. You don't have to like money. You can hate everything about capitalism. But unless you've got an army, money is your only real weapon. Without it, you're just hoping the world plays fair. It doesn't. It never has. So either you build leverage or you get used to begging. Those are your two options. Money doesn't solve everything, but being broke solves nothing. Without leverage, even your best ideas die in your throat because no one's listening. Without leverage, you become replaceable in every room. Without leverage, your life is just reacting to someone else's decisions. So stop pretending it doesn't matter. Start building something that puts you in control. Because until you have leverage, you have nothing. Most stress comes from financial pressure. That's the silent killer everyone wants to ignore. People walk around pretending they're fine, pretending they're calm, pretending they've got things under control, but behind that fake smile is a storm of anxiety. And it's almost always about money. It's not the relationship. It's not the job. It's not the weather or some mystical energy. It's the unpaid bills, the mounting debt, the constant uncertainty about whether they can afford to make it through the month. That's the root of the tension. You see couples yelling at each other over stupid things, toothpaste, groceries, someone being 5 minutes late. But scratch the surface and you'll find the real issue: money. Financial stress makes people irritable, reactive, cold. It turns small problems into big ones because it amplifies every fear. When you don't know how you're going to pay rent or keep your car from being repossessed, everything becomes a threat. You're living in fight or flight mode 24/7, and that breaks you down from the inside out. People say they want peace, but peace costs money. Try being peaceful when your phone won't stop buzzing from collection agencies. Try meditating when your fridge is empty and your landlord's on your back. Try being a present parent when you're too busy drowning in thoughts of how you're going to feed your family. The truth is, most people's minds aren't racing because of trauma. Their minds are racing because they're broke. That's the weight that keeps them up at night. That's the pressure that eats away at their sanity. The real flex isn't luxury, it's peace of mind. It's waking up and knowing you're not in survival mode. It's having space to think clearly, breathe deeply, and make decisions from a position of strength, not desperation. But when your back's against the wall financially, your brain can't even function at full power. You're constantly distracted, constantly anxious, constantly grinding just to stay afloat. And in that state, you can't build, you can't grow, you can't lead. You're stuck. You want better relationships, fix your finances. You want a stronger mindset, fix your finances. You want to feel healthy again, fix your finances. Because all that stress you're carrying, that weight on your shoulders, is connected to a lack of security. And in this world, security comes from money. You can talk about love and community and good vibes all you want, but if the bills aren't paid, those things break down fast. Love turns into resentment. Community turns into obligation. Vibes turn into silence. That's how it really works. Even your body starts to collapse under financial stress. Your sleep gets worse. Your diet gets worse. Your energy disappears. Your immune system weakens. All because your mind is constantly locked in survival mode, worrying about what happens next. And people call that normal. People think it's just part of being an adult. This constant pressure, this never-ending race. But it's not normal. It's a trap. And the only way out is through financial elevation. You don't need millions to feel peace. You just need control. You need to know that if something goes wrong, you can handle it. That if someone disrespects you, you can walk away. That if an opportunity comes, you can say yes without hesitation. That control comes from money, not the paper, the power behind it. It's not about chasing cash like a fool. It's about building a fortress around your life so stress can't break in and destroy you from the inside. People want to feel confident, but confidence is hard when your reality is built on sand. How can you walk tall when every step might be the one that breaks you? How can you feel worthy when you're constantly in need? How can you be calm when you're surrounded by chaos? You can't. And deep down, most people know it. That's why they feel restless even when everything seems okay. Because deep down, they know the foundation is weak, and that weakness is financial. Fixing your money isn't just about buying more things. It's about removing the constant panic that's hijacked your nervous system. It's about switching off survival mode so you can think clearly again. It's about putting yourself in a position where stress can't control you. Because until your money is right, nothing else can truly be right. Not your mindset, not your health, not your relationships, not your future. Health and peace require money. That's the reality nobody wants to accept because it's easier to believe you can meditate your way out of stress or eat healthy on a dollar menu. But the facts are plain. If you want to take care of your body, protect your mind, and live with real peace, it takes financial power, not hope, not positive thinking, cash. Because everything that keeps you alive and strong costs money. And the better the quality, the higher the price. You can pretend that walking in the park and drinking water is enough to stay healthy, but that's survival level thinking. Real health comes from clean food, proper supplements, regular medical checkups, private healthcare, personalized fitness routines, and rest. All of that takes money. Organic food isn't cheap. A quality gym isn't free. Good healthcare without waiting in line for weeks doesn't come from the government. It comes from your wallet. When you're broke, you settle. You eat what you can afford, not what your body needs. You skip appointments because you can't cover the bill. You ignore pain until it becomes a crisis. That's not health. That's just delaying the damage. And peace. Peace only comes when you're not at war with your environment. If every day is a battlefield with debt, deadlines, and desperation, there's no room for peace. You can't breathe easy when your phone rings and you flinch because you think it's a creditor. You can't relax when you're sleeping in a noisy apartment with broken heating and neighbors fighting through the walls. You can't feel calm when every decision is based on how little you can spend. Peace is a luxury the poor can't afford, no matter how many motivational quotes they post. People love to glorify the struggle. They wear their suffering like a badge of honor. But there's nothing noble about being exhausted, sick, and broke. That's not strength. That's just endurance under pressure. Real strength is having the resources to say no to stress, no to toxicity, no to overwork, and yes to recovery, yes to time off, yes to balance. But when your wallet is empty, your options are limited. You can't take a break when you're living paycheck to paycheck. You can't slow down when stopping means falling behind. And you definitely can't heal in the same environment that's making you sick. Health is maintenance, not a miracle. You don't just wake up one day with a strong immune system or a clear mind. You build those things over time with proper sleep, clean fuel, mental clarity, and emotional stability, all of which are tied directly to your financial situation. It's easy to talk about discipline and mindset when you can afford a massage, a therapist, a personal trainer, and a meal plan. Try doing that while working 2 jobs and eating instant noodles at midnight. It's not the same game. You want a calm mind. Sleep matters. You want deep sleep. You need a quiet room, a quality mattress, the time to rest without alarms jerking you out of bed after 5 hours. All of that takes money. You want to reduce anxiety, remove financial chaos. You want to recover from burnout. You need time away from the grind, time that most people can't afford because they don't have the cash cushion to stop hustling. You want to focus on personal growth, healing, becoming your best self. You better not be starving while you do it. You see all these influencers preaching about journaling, meditation, and spiritual journeys. But behind all of that is financial freedom. They're not stressed about rent. They're not worried about car repairs. They've created a life where peace is possible because money isn't a daily obstacle. That's the real cheat code, not the crystals, not the affirmations. Money is the foundation. Once that's secure, everything else becomes possible. Even in emergencies, the difference between life and death is often financial. The ability to get immediate help, the best doctors, the right treatment, it's all paid for. There's no peace in knowing your health depends on public systems that are overloaded and underfunded. There's no calm in watching someone you love suffer because the treatment they need is out of reach. These are the situations money prevents. Not because it makes you invincible, but because it gives you access. Access to solutions, access to care, access to space, time, and rest. Peace and health are the most valuable assets a person can have, but they don't fall from the sky. They're purchased, protected, and preserved with money. And if you don't have it, you're gambling every day with your well-being. You can't win in life without resources. That's the cold reality everyone keeps trying to dodge, hoping they can out-hustle, outsmart, or out-luck the game without ever having to face the truth. But life doesn't reward the hardest worker. It rewards the person with the most resources, money, connections, time, tools. You can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you don't have what you need to execute, you're just another person with potential that never turned into power. Resources are what separate talkers from doers. Everyone's got ideas, everyone's got dreams, but without the means to bring them to life, it's all noise. Try launching a business without capital. Try scaling an idea without a team, without marketing, without systems. Try breaking into an industry without the right contacts or information. You hit walls, and those walls don't care how passionate you are. They don't care how hungry you are. They move for people with leverage, and leverage comes from resources. You see people on top and think they're lucky, think they had it easy. But what they had, more than anything else, was access. Access to knowledge, access to networks, access to funding. While you're stuck Googling how to survive the month, they're deploying resources to expand, to dominate, to stay 10 steps ahead. That's the difference. You're struggling to survive. They're strategizing to conquer. It's not about being rich just for the sake of luxury. It's about stacking advantages so high that losing becomes almost impossible. When you have resources, you can fail and still recover. You can make mistakes and still win. You can move faster than the competition because you're not trapped in the mud of scarcity. Most people never reach their full potential, not because they didn't try hard enough, because they were never given or never built the resources they needed to rise. Time itself is a resource that most people waste because they're too broke to control it. You can't invest in your body, your mind, your growth when you're working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. You can't think long-term when your reality is built on short-term survival. That's what being resource-starved does to you. It traps you in cycles that eat your future before you can even start building it. You lose the game before you even take the field. Even talent needs fuel. How many talented artists, athletes, creators do you know who gave up or faded out because they didn't have the tools or support to keep going? The world is full of genius that went nowhere, not because it wasn't real, but it wasn't funded. Meanwhile, average people with funding are running industries, building empires, controlling narratives, because this world doesn't reward raw ability. It rewards those who can turn ability into impact. And that takes resources. You want to be dangerous in life. Be the guy who's talented and resourced. Be the one who got skills and the money to scale. Be the one who's got ideas and the platform to amplify them. Be the one who doesn't have to beg, doesn't have to borrow every day, doesn't have to wait for someone else's permission to move. That's real power. That's what wins in the real world. Not just dreams, but dreams backed by firepower. When you're resource poor, you're always reacting, always scrambling, always behind. You can't plan, you can't defend, and you definitely can't attack. That's how most people live, on the edge of collapse, hoping for a break that never comes because they don't have what it takes to push through. It's not even their fault sometimes. They just never got the right information, never built the right habits, never escaped the trap. But whether it's your fault or not, it's still your responsibility to change it. You want to win, build your arsenal, stack money, build networks, gain skills, learn systems. Collect resources like your life depends on it, because it does. Every resource you add is another weapon, another shield, another step closer to freedom. And every day you waste without them is another day someone else pulls ahead, not because they're better than you, but because they're equipped. This world rewards those who show up ready. And readiness isn't about hype, it's about resources. Money gives you freedom, not fake freedom. Real, undeniable, unshakable freedom. The kind of freedom where you wake up and choose how your day goes, who you spend your time with, what you do, where you go, and when you go there. That kind of freedom doesn't exist when you're broke. When you're broke, your life isn't yours. It belongs to your boss, your bills, your landlord, your debt collectors, your stress. You're not living, you're surviving. And there's a massive difference between the two. Most people have never experienced real freedom. They've been stuck in a cycle since they were kids, told to follow the rules, get the job, stay quiet, be grateful for a paycheck that barely covers the basics. And the moment they start questioning the system, they're reminded how much they depend on it. That's not freedom. That's quiet slavery dressed up as adulthood. True freedom is when you're not dependent on anyone for your peace, your decisions, your direction. That only happens when you have money, allows you to walk away from disrespect. It lets you say no without explaining yourself. It gives you the power to move without permission. People talk about confidence, but every day. But real confidence is knowing you don't need to tolerate anything you don't like. You don't need to beg. You don't need to compromise your values. Every day, you don't need to beg to keep the lights on. That power doesn't come from self-help books or motivational speeches. It comes from having money in your account and options at your fingertips.
You don't grow in safety. You grow when you stretch, when you sacrifice, when you suffer. And if you can learn to embrace that, not just accept it, but welcome it, then you become dangerous. You become someone who can't be stopped by pain, by fear, by failure. You become someone who doesn't run from the fire, but walks straight through it and comes out harder than before. That's what suffering gives you. And that's why you should embrace it with everything you've got. There is no finish line. That's the mindset you need if you want to go beyond average, beyond limits, beyond what you ever thought was possible. Most people live with the idea that one day it's going to get easier. One day they'll arrive. One day they'll finally be able to coast. That's the trap. That's the lie. There is no arrival. There is no point where you're done. The moment you start thinking you've made it is the moment you start falling behind. The mindset that got you to the top has to keep evolving, or it will become the same weakness that brings you down. When you realize there is no finish line, everything changes. You stop chasing moments and start chasing mastery. You stop looking for an exit and start looking for more challenge, more resistance, more pressure. Not because you hate yourself, not because you're broken, but because you understand that growth has no ceiling. The moment you cross one mountain, another one appears. The moment you crush one goal, another one calls your name. That's not failure. That's the process. That's how you stay dangerous. That's how you keep building. You've got to love the grind for what it is, not for what it gives you. Most people are only committed until it hurts, until it gets boring, until the high wears off. Then they look for something else to chase, some new distraction to give them the illusion of progress. But if you've truly locked in, if you truly embrace the path, then you don't need external validation. You're not chasing trophies. You're chasing the next level of yourself. The work becomes the reward. The suffering becomes the standard. You stop asking, when can I rest? And start asking, how much further can I go? You have to be willing to be in this forever, not for a season, not for a year, not for the sake of some temporary transformation. You've got to make it a lifestyle, a code, a creed. You wake up and go to war with yourself every single day because you know that's the only way to keep what you've earned. Progress isn't permanent. Confidence isn't permanent. Strength isn't permanent. Every single day is a reset. You either show up and earn it again, or you start sliding backward. People who think they've arrived stop training. They stop learning. They stop sharpening the blade. And that's when the decline starts. Success makes people soft if they're not careful. Comfort makes killers forget they were born to fight. If you let the medals, the praise, or the results convince you that you're done, you've already lost. You've become the version of yourself that thinks the battle is over, when in reality, it's just beginning. Because once you hit a level most people never reach, the pressure only increases. The expectations rise. The resistance gets heavier. You don't get a break. You get a bigger target on your back. There is no finish line, because every version of yourself is just a stepping stone to the next one. You're not here to coast. You're here to evolve, to grind, to break yourself down and rebuild stronger over and over and over again. That's what elite looks like. That's what savage looks like. It's not just intensity. It's consistency. It's showing up when the fire is gone, when the applause fades, when the road gets lonely. It's doing the work without needing a reason, without needing a deadline, without needing a reward. If you want to separate yourself from the masses, you've got to adopt the mindset that there is no end to this. You train like it's day one, every day. You study like you're still a rookie. You hustle like you've got nothing to fall back on. Because the second you slow down, the second you start believing you've done enough, is the second someone else outworks you, outlasts you, and overtakes you. Hunger has to be permanent. Drive has to be permanent. Discipline has to be permanent. You're not chasing a finish line. You're building a legacy. You're building a mindset that doesn't get shaken by obstacles, that doesn't get lazy with wins, that doesn't fold under pressure. And that comes from never letting yourself believe the work is done. The best version of you is still out there, still in the shadows, still waiting to be carved out through sweat, failure, repetition, and relentless effort. If you want to find that version, you keep moving, you keep grinding, you keep showing up like you've got everything to prove. Because the moment you stop, the moment you think you've arrived, is the moment everything starts slipping away.